Hello, how are you? Dr. Baber just talked about the Global Burden of Disease Project. He mentioned and presented a lot of statistics about DALY. DALY is the Disability Adjusted Life Years. And as you can see, the statistics presented is measure of the societal measure of disease or the disability burden in populations. So DALY, as Dr. Baber also talked about, representing a health gap, such as measure the state of population health compared to a normative goal. The goal is at this point, we compare what you can live, the quality of life, the disability adjusted life to full life expectancy at birth. So currently is about 84. That's 84, 85, depends on what year you use, what country you use. So one DALY is, as Dr. Baber mentioned earlier too, is equal to 1 year of healthy life loss. So how do you calculate it? Think about the life expectancy and how much life you lived. You can have a very healthy life without disease. And at one point, you will be diagnosed with certain disease at various age, depends on person. Then you may exceed the life expectancy, normal life expectancy, or you may die a little early. So in between, so that when you think in this concept, so DALY has two major components. One is years lived with disability. So when you have a disease, diagnosed disease to the time you die. And the other component is years of life lost. That's pretty simple and straightforward. Is, if you live the normal life expectancy as what projected at birth versus if you die a little early. So we'll explain each concept, how to calculate it in the next few slides. So how to calculate year lived with disability? Thinking about the epidemiological concept, we're talking about incidence, the new disease coming up, and also we're talking about prevalence. So talking about the year lived with disability also have two ways. One way is incidence calculation. So it's number for the incident cases in that population and times the disability weight of that certain specific illness or condition, and times the average length duration of the case until remission or death. So it sounds like a pretty complicated. And talking about the prevalence, a little simpler, is prevalence times disability weight. And Dr. Baber, in the previous lecture, explained what disability weight is. And here is a specific formula. So disability weight is generated from a lot of statistics. And it's defined as how much a medical condition affects a person or level of the disability then result from that particular conditions. So it's determined by that specific disease, and it may or may not vary by age. For example, if you suffer from opioid overdose, age may not as important factor. If you are not able to do certain things at a certain time, and this overdose will induce the same amount of disability, you cannot function in the society. But for other conditions, may vary by age. We'll review the GBD project. So over time, since 2004, and GBD project trying to estimate the population disability and weights. And it changes over time because the definition of the disease change, and the more information we know about the disease. So that's why, for example, if you look at dementia, dementia have 3 categories. But in 2004, we don't have a mild dementia category. So that means, over time, we can diagnose certain disease better, and we can more refine about the disability weight. I think in Dr. Baber's talk, he also presented different disability weights. And we can see for cocaine and heroin, the disability weights actually change over time. It depends upon the impact of the population. Here, I want to give you an example. How do you calculate a year YLD, year of life lost due to disability? So for example, we have a person who lived up age 30, pretty healthy, and got a knee injury. And he lived for knee injury. He recovered fairly well. So the disability weight is about 0.1. So it does impact his life a little bit, but not able. He can still live pretty healthy life. He died at age 80. So he lived about 50 years before he died after the knee injury. However, the disability weight is impact his almost like 10% of his life. So 50 times 0.1 is 5 years. So years of life lost due to disability is 5 years. However, thinking about it earlier on, I talk about life expectancy is 84 years. So he didn't live to the normal life expectancy. How do we calculate years of life lost due to premature mortality, called YLL? Think about it. This is by looking at each person, this concept is very straightforward. So, but by looking at the population level, you have to count number of deaths due to that particular condition and times standard life expectancy at that age. That means expectancy minus age of premature death. Looking at the first case, we're going to calculate the DALY, which means it's the summation of a year of life lost due to disability and a year of life lost due to premature death. At this time, life expectancy is 84, so he died at 80, so his life lost is 4 years. So 5 plus 4 equals to 9 years. For this particular person, his disability adjusted life years lost is 9 years. In order to calculate DALY, the disability weight is very important, which is vary from 0, no disability affected at all, to 1 is death. And the disability weight is really very specific for each disease. So that's why in the previous lecture, Dr. Baber talking a lot about, epidemiological studies. That's where we study each condition, and we get a good population-based study, and then we can get more accurate disability weights. So these weights are used to, just like I illustrated previously, the DALY. And so these DALYs of all patients from a specific disease and plus other disease, then we can calculate this total burden of disease from different regions. And the main goal of DALY is we can compare the burden, disease of burden, caused by different risk factors and different diseases, and also across different groups and regions. And the bottom line is really, it's more like a standardized statistics. So in order to compare across different groups, you need to have a way to standardize this number. So the number 1 is equal to the 1 in different regions. That's the whole idea about DALY. What's the limitation of DALY? DALY is essentially an economic measure. of human productivity. And the disease burden survey may not fully capture the impact of mental illness. How do we really come up accurate disability rates for depression? And a lot of times it's self-reported, and also we can looking at the productivity of this person. It's not the ability of how this person can work, it's really the outcome of how this person can perform in a society. So we may not be able to capture all the factors and from the mental illness to accurately assess the impact. But in a way is in this class we're talking about estimates. How can we get best estimates? Accuracy is there's no science is 100% accurate, but the improvement of science, the improvement of our epidemiological survey understanding of the disease can help us to get the best estimates to understand a disease burden or a disease. You are going to have a little exercise and calculation based on this lecture to calculate their own DALYs for a small village. So let's begin. Thank you.